What is up, enthusiasts? It is Cedar Flags here, and welcome back to the what is now annual tradition of figuring out what Cedar Point will get in the upcoming years. I've done Cedar Point 2020, I've done Cedar Point 2021, and all of those were wrong. So, welcome back to my channel, and today we are talking about 2022. Now, this video is going to have a little more to it due to the events that have happened this year and the celebration of the 150th anniversary. So let's get into that right now. Here's what we know already. Before the pandemic, Cedar Point planned on a 2-year celebration to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the park. Now we all know due to the pandemic, it was put back a year, so the 2-year celebration will now be from 2021 to 2022, as opposed to 2020 and 2021. 2020 being the actual 150th anniversary of the park. Now we also know already what they are going to add in 2021, because they already announced what the first year was going to be like in the 2-year celebration. But they did say that the second year of the celebration will be much bigger than the first. We see a few minor improvements, a few festivities, and a new Snake River Rapids ride, which is just a boat ride. But 2022 is going to be a much bigger year. The second year is going to be a lot bigger, and I guarantee that it's going to be something that's going to shake the coaster community. So, let's now look at a few plots of land for where this new expansion could be. The first one I want to talk about is probably the most likely and the one I've been having my eyes on for the past few years. It is the old spot of the Cedars Hotel, or the Cedars Dorms. This is in between Valraven and Millennium Force, and it used to be one of the oldest buildings on the peninsula, but now it is a flat piece of land. They have also recently removed their Sandcastle Suites Hotel to make more room for Lighthouse Point, so I could definitely see them removing a little bit of Lighthouse Point and removing some of the cabins and putting them in the Sandcastle spot, maybe opening up a new plot of land for a new roller coaster. And finally, this one's an absolute long shot, but I've seen a few recent concepts with this area, talking about the western parking lot facing the Cedar Point Marina in Sandusky Bay. This is always very sparsely populated with cars, and I feel like they could easily take some of this out and put a new plot of land in there for a new expansion. Now, of course, there are several rides you could remove, but at the same time, I just want to focus on rides that are already removed and plots of land that are already open, so that's all that I got. Now, let's get to the bulk of the video, the concepts. So the first concept I want to talk about is the B&M Flyer. Now, I want to talk about this B&M Flyer because I truly feel like this is now the most likely scenario for Cedar Point's near future. And there are many reasons that I think that, but let's start off with Cedar Fair's relationship with B&M. If you were to name the company with the best relationship with Cedar Fair, I would easily say it's Bolliger and Mabillard. It's definitely the one they've spent the most money on in the past 10 years. Intimidator at Carowinds, Fury at Carowinds, look at all these rides. You have Orion at Kings Island, Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland, Banshee at Kings Island. You get the idea. But anyway, Cedar Fair loves B&M, and from a coaster standpoint, I could definitely see why. They have the best operations out of any manufacturer, and they are by far the most reliable. Plus, there is also no flying coaster anywhere near. Cedar Point doesn't have a flying coaster, and there is no flying coaster in sight. Kings Island removed their flying coaster, so now the nearest is probably Superman Ultimate Flight at Six Flags Great America. Of course, it would be record-breaking, probably the first to go over 200 feet, but that's my opinion, and that's what I think. The next concept I want to talk about is something that not a lot of people have been thinking about when it comes to Cedar Point, but let me explain. If you can't tell on the screen, it is a Mack spinning coaster, something similar to Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City. Now, similar to the B&M Flyer, this would be new to Cedar Point. Cedar Point does not have a spinning coaster, and this would definitely fill that margin. And Cedar Point does not have a ride by Mack Rides. Now, Cedar Fair has a great relationship with Mack Rides. Look at some rides like Copperhead Strike that have really been successful, and this would definitely be a great hit at Cedar Point. It could possibly be the world's tallest and fastest spinning coaster if they really played their cards right, and it would definitely be an elite coaster if it was even better than Time Traveler. Next, we got a GCI Hybrid. Sticking with manufacturers that the company is working with, GCI is a company that Cedar Fair has been working with for a pretty long time, going back to rides like Renegade and Prowler all the way up to Mystic Timbers at Kings Island, and the renovation of Ghost Rider at Knott's Berry Farm. Cedar Fair has a great relationship with this company in making modern and sharp wooden coasters. Now, I wouldn't see some ordinary GCI here, something like Prowler or Mystic Timbers. I would see something much bigger. I would probably like to see something similar to what they had at IAPA the other year, talking about the steel supports and the inversions. Having some sort of hybrid aspect, this could probably be one of the best GCIs in the world. I do think they could easily beat Wodan Timber Coaster as the tallest GCI, but when it comes to the tallest wooden coaster, that's going to be very hard to beat, especially with the plots of land that they have and how risky it is to build a wooden coaster that is over 200 feet. But again, we are talking about Cedar Point here. But anyway, let's move on to what I think would be the best concept, even though it is the final and least likely one out of the four. We are talking about the RMC T-Rex. Now, I have a lot of doubts with this one. I know Cedar Point is very experimental, but of course, due to the stock market crash with the pandemic, they might cut down. Now, there is a lot to talk about here. A single rail coaster would be pretty big for Cedar Point, and there would be a lot in store for this concept. The first thing I will say is there's definitely a massive range with this ride. We could either see something that could be the tallest single rail coaster, maybe hanging around 150 to 200 feet, or we could see the tallest coaster in the world. I mean, Fred Grubb and Alan Schilke have said that you could build these up to 500 feet, so who knows? We could possibly get the first 500 foot at Cedar Point with this T-Rex, but of course, with the pandemic and the stock market right now, that is pretty unlikely. I'd say the most likely standpoint would probably be something hovering around the 200, 250 foot mark. That's still pretty big though, and it would probably still be one of the best roller coasters on Earth if Cedar Point was willing to take the challenge. Now let me just say, I wanted to make this video a little more realistic than some of my past videos. In some of my past Cedar Point videos, I talked about SNS 4D coasters, massive observation towers, and even some polar coaster concepts. And as much as that would be awesome, I could definitely see some of these more realistic versions coming to Cedar Point soon. I was crazy back then, but now I'm just trying to be a little more realistic here. I know it's not the grandioso roller coaster, but at the same time, you gotta remember that Cedar Point has roller coasters for absolutely everyone, and if this next coaster isn't for you, that's perfectly fine, because they know that it will be a good coaster for someone else. But anyway, what do you think about this? What do you think Cedar Point will get? And what do you think about the park in general? This is Cedar Flags, and I will see you all later.